Hey guys, it's Olivie Blake, and this is me not writing. So, I will hydrate later, I promise. What can I tell you? Well, first of all, I don't know if you know or care, but Katy Perry's new album came out. I think her daughter's name is so cute. I know a lot of people think it's too cute. Her name is Daisy Dove Bloom, but when people were speculating that Katy Perry's daughter was going to be named Daisy, I was like, Daisy Bloom is the cutest name ever. She sounds like a rom-com heroine. But anyway, none of this is important, except that after I listened to her new album, I actually really like Katy Perry. I've also, for some reason, seen her documentary, and the part where she is essentially handling her divorce over the phone and then has to go out and sing and almost can't do it. It's just it's wild. Anyway, I love Katy Perry, but I don't really love a lot of her new stuff. It feels a little bit like she's trying to replicate older stuff, but I still listen to it anyway because I love her. But I was listening to Teenage Dream, the album, last night, and I love it so much. So in case you needed a reason to listen to One of the Boys, her first album, and Teenage Dream, her second album, you should do that because I am doing it too. I'm just babbling. Okay, so this month's spell read. So I was perusing The Woman That I Am, The Literature and Culture of Contemporary Women of Color, which is edited by D. Soyini Madison. It's literally just a collection of stuff that's written by women of color, and then it's broken down by the type of work, so poetry or fiction, and then the authors, and also the different ethnicities they belong to. So it is broken down by African Americans, Asian Americans, Native Americans, and Latinas. And I was just flipping through this. This was a recommendation from Tracy Dion, whose book Legend Born is coming out very soon, I believe in 2 weeks, so that's exciting. I was going through here and I came across what I thought was an essay by Amy Tan. And so Amy Tan, I've said before that I'm originally from the Bay Area, which is extremely populated by Asian Americans. So I do know that in some of my English classes, I encountered Amy Tan's work, but then I realized I had never actually read any of it in full. I haven't even read The Joy Luck Club, which is why we're reading The Joy Luck Club this month for S.P.E.L.L. It's a classic for a reason. I've mentioned before that I don't want to exclusively read new books because they're expensive, and maybe you're less likely to get it from the library and stuff. So I wanted to find something that was a little bit more accessible in case, financial needs or whatever. So initially I read The Woman Warrior by Maxine Hong Kingston, which was it was a little bit too poetic for me. I think one of the great shames in my life is that I don't really enjoy poetry. I don't really get it. I think it's because poetry is designed to be read out loud. Part of what poetry is the syncopation and the rhythm. And I think poetry has to be listened to rather than read, even though it's designed to be read. I don't know. I have some trouble with poetry. I didn't enjoy, for example, Possession by A.S. Byatt. I tried really hard and couldn't do it. I just couldn't focus. Enough of my shortcomings. So I didn't love The Woman Warrior because it was just it was very, very abstract. And The Joy Luck Club is abstract, but in more of it's more of standalone, not standalone because they are all interwoven, but vignettes about these mothers and daughters, the mothers who were all born in China and the daughters who were all born in the United States, and their relationship with each other, and their lives kind of get spelled out in the negative space. They each have, their chapter or two of what their life is and their experience, and then you can kind of piece together what they mean to each other by reading how these stories overlap and what they think of each other. It's a really interesting way to tell a story, I think. So yeah, this is a really good one. Hopefully it will be relatively easy for you to find. Also, if you're interested in watching the film, I also watched the film recently. It is on I think Amazon Prime, but you can stream it. They did, one thing I will want to talk about if you do end up reading this book is that they changed one of the stories pretty drastically, and I would love to talk about why they chose to change it for the movie, because Amy Tan was a screenwriter for the movie, so it's not like they just disregarded her opinion, and I'm sure she's done an interview on it, but I haven't looked it up yet. We have all the next month to do this, so yeah, The Joy Luck Club this month. Okay. I have a feeling the quality of this video is not going to be very good because it's quite early in the morning and very gray. Forgive me my lack of studio lighting. So I got an ask that I can't do very much with. just because, you know, a lot of the stuff we talk about doesn't have a solution or anything. It just is something that we're, you know, that collectively annoyed about. So this is going to be one of those where there's not super anything to say, but let's just talk about it anyway. So, hi Olivie. I remember you mentioned the struggle you had writing about the rich in The Princess's Guide to Popular Statecraft, which I recently finished. I don't remember if I talked about it on this vlog, but I definitely wrote into my author's note that, like, with the pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement and everything that was going on, it just felt like writing about the privileged British aristocracy was just, like, not the mood. It kind of took a lot more work for me to even be able to write it, because, like, how do you create sympathetic characters out of people who in real life I don't necessarily sympathize that much with? Like, sure, I can sympathize with Meghan Markle's treatment by the press, but also she's, like, very wealthy and fine. You know, it's a little bit hard to want to tell the stories of people who, like, their suffering is fairly limited. You know, everybody is inside their own experience, which is the whole point of this, you know, franchise, this storyverse. Is just all about how you never really know what's going on in the interiority of someone's life until you're actually occupying it. But at the same time, is this a story that really needs to be told right now? It's hard to say. And by hard to say, I mean no. But we'll come back to this. So yeah, I wondered if you ever feel anger or resentment towards celebrities / the wealthy whose actions make it seem like they think because they have money they can do whatever they want. And if you do, how do you handle those feelings in situations we can't control? Like Trump and Kanye running for president because they think having money must make them qualified. Or the Bella Thorne OnlyFans thing where she made the most money in a single day but lied about the photos. So if you don't know about this, she said she was going to give out nudes, but it was really only PG-13, which has now caused the rules to change. So things are harder for the people who actually rely on the platform to make ends meet. Or even just the way celebrities messed up the YouTube or Instagram algorithms, making it harder for creators there too. It can feel like they run around as if this is all some game while the rest of us are left to drown in their destruction. I don't know, it's just frustrating. LOL. Great use of LOL at the end there. That's where I would put, like, the upside down smiley. The only emoji I really do use all the time is the upside down smiley face, because that's just like that ironic use of LOL. That's like, ha ha ha, I said something serious. Let's lighten the mood. At the beginning of the pandemic, well, more specifically, the beginning of quarantine, I read this article about all these, like, wealthy New Yorkers who were essentially escaping to the country. And, like, I remember reading this one line, which is, if you have money, you have no fear. You're not afraid of anything. And I think that's really true, and I think that's what's really frustrating, because the flip side of that is if you don't have money, you're afraid of everything. Mr. Blake has pretty serious pre-existing conditions, and so for a couple of years, he didn't have any health insurance, and he was an athlete. And so every time he would get hurt or get sick, it was this terrifying thing that was just like, we're not going to be able to afford this. Like, if he gets really injured, if he has to have surgery, it will bankrupt us. We have no money. We have no savings. We were like basically children, just like trying to get by. I was still in law school at the time and, like, did not have money. And it was just essentially this, you know, this sense that you're hoping that because you're young and healthy, nothing will ever happen to you. But really, it's terrifying to just exist in the world. So if you have money, you don't have that fear. You don't have that insecurity. You never worry about what's going to happen to you. I worry constantly about what happens to my parents because I'm the oldest daughter. And if my parents get sick or something, I don't really have the means to take care of them. I certainly can't take them in to my 1-bedroom apartment. And, you know, it's a lot of stuff that just weighs on me just because I don't understand how people accumulate wealth, you know? Like, it's not just a matter of having choices or having a job or whatever. It's so many things that are stacked against you institutionally. When I answered this on Tumblr, I kind of unraveled into a whole thing about how the institutions are so biased because, you know, they overserve the wealthy and underserve the poor. And the reason I keep thinking about this is this whole Bella Thorne OnlyFans thing. The unsympathetic responses that people are giving are just astounding to me. I think the biggest thing with the Bella Thorne thing was the change where creators only get paid monthly as opposed to weekly. And people may really rely on getting that money quickly because you never know what situations might arise that you can't just dip into your imaginary savings account. So, which is why I think for me, it just always comes back to just the infrastructure of wealth and who has it and who doesn't. If you want to focus on the problem being celebrity culture, because we can't focus on the problem being stratified income levels because there's not a lot we can do about that currently, except for, you can vote in November, which would help. If we focus just on the culture of celebrity and why that's frustrating, I think that it is definitely, I also read another article yesterday that I will link here about how influencers have not, by and large, not really changed their behavior as a result of the pandemic. They're still kind of going about doing business as usual. And it's really highlighting the fact that they're just completely out of touch. I was thinking about this sort of commodity of sameness, of wanting to resemble these people in your feed, wanting to, pattern your life off of a celebrity, or whether you admit to that, whether you do that consciously or not. That's what fashion is. Trend basically proves income. Either you can buy into these trends or you can't. Content creators that generate more money are more favored in the algorithms. So I guess what can we do about this? One thing is I think we have to be aware of what we're consuming, who we're consuming it from, and why we're consuming it. Because what can you do really aside from adjusting your own expectations? This is sort of a two-part, on the one hand, what can we do is maybe not idolize celebrities so much, because I think the fact is they are fearless. They get isolated by the money that they have, and everybody has problems. So they kind of assume well, I am a human being with problems and therefore I am no worse than you, even though their money makes it so that they are always more safe than you. So one thing we can do is lessen the amount to which we actually allow celebrities to influence us, and how much we commodify their lifestyles. And the other thing we can do is support smaller independent creators who are not trying to be famous. They're just trying to make a living. I think that was something that Lilith Mora and I highlighted when we were talking about our careers, is we're not trying to be, I'm not trying to be a bestseller. That would be great, but all I want is a career. All I want is to be able to have money in my savings account in case, something happens. I'd love to be able to own a very small, reasonably sized house someday. And these things feel so, so distant because this thing that I provide, this thing that is, ideally my talent or my calling, my passion, certainly, some people believe they should get it for free. And, maybe part of what we have to do is to adjust our expectations of how we actually consume things. I feel like you could ask me this question every day for the next week, and I would give you a completely different answer. And today my focus is on content creators and the fact that they deserve to be paid for what they do. Celebrities have done really not much for us during this time, but artists have. And kind of making that distinction of what we support and what we value. You brought up algorithms, so that's where my focus is today. Yesterday, my focus was on the Trump and Kanye and the rich feeling like they have, some right to have a voice because they can pay for their voice. And the rest of us, not so much. These are frustrating times that are really revealing all the little cracks and flaws and the not so little cracks and flaws. And I think one of the things we have to face is this idea that I don't know, the first thing that comes to mind is, I think it was a Tumblr post that was have these celebrities forgotten that they're the court jesters and they entertain us like we are the kings of society? But yeah, I think we can't expect people who have money to be aware of what the every person, what the every girl's life is like. I talked about AOC and how she was a bartender, and that kind of, for her, that struggle is very close to her because she knows what it's like. A lot of celebrities have forgotten what it's like if they ever knew it. Someone once asked me about children of celebrities, and I cannot even get started on that. So it's just, yeah, it's no good answer. Definitely, I really had trouble writing about the wealthy, and if you've read The Princess's Guide to Popular Statecraft, you know how it ends. There was no other way for me to end it. There was no way for me to be like, oh yes, this system makes sense. I'm sure there are people who didn't like it, but I think my personal escapism was to dismantle the system that is the problem. So I think at this point, this isn't even a question. This is just sort of a discussion of, this is more grievance airing, but yeah, you're right to be frustrated. And I think the thing that's so upsetting about the whole sex worker conversation is that people are like, sex workers should get real jobs. And it's like, so is that the sex workers' problem, or is it the problem of people who are adding value to that work? Like if people are willing to pay a premium for what a sex worker is offering, then is the problem that they're offering it, or that people value it that way? If someone is going to make the money that they need in order to make rent, or to make a student loan payment, or to make a healthcare payment, are they really going to settle for a month at Amazon or something that they can do in a brief period of time and get paid right away? And so for that option to be taken off the table because a celebrity, like, it's sickening. It really is. But yeah, it's that lack of fear. They are not afraid anymore because they have money. And so to say that money isn't everything, it's certainly something. Well, cheery as this is, figured I would read you a little bit of Stone's Throw, which is a story, and the answer you are looking for is yes, which is my anthology that is coming out in about 3 weeks. So yeah, this is Stone's Throw. Salim Emrani had been convinced from the age of 6 that his older brother was not actually his brother, but in fact some sort of fairy changeling. This is a fact that eventually came to define his life. When Hassan Emrani was found dead of an overdose at 21, Salim had not wept at the funeral. Whatever that thing was, they weren't of this world, he had said to his grieving parents, earning himself a hard slap across the face. He had been 15 at the time. Salim had come to realize long before then that there were certain things he ought to keep to himself. Like, for example, the belief that his brother had been stolen one night and replaced by a thing designed to do nothing but mindlessly consume. Hassan was just troubled, according to Salim's mother and father, an alcoholic, a drug addict, a sex addict. Troubled. Therapy didn't help, and pharmaceuticals certainly didn't. Salim knew the thing that had replaced his brother had dead eyes and a carnivorous mouth where his heart should be, but there was no convincing anyone else. Only he could see it. Salim's parents had always considered him overly imaginative, too bookish. Hassan, while he'd still been Hassan, had been the opposite. Brightly illuminative, charming, and athletic, with a smile that made their aunties exclaim things about how he'd drive the girls wild one day. He did, though not in a normal way, because again, that wasn't Hassan. Whatever it was destructive and cruel even while it was handsome. It treated flattery like a noose and wielded poison like a blade. Knowing that he shared a house with a monster, Salim had taken to reading. Portals, he learned, were very real. There were other dimensions, other creatures. This new not Hassan was one of those, although Salim didn't know which one. He read and read and read to find out. Then the thing that wasn't Hassan died, and Salim started reading different books. How to summon things from other realms, how to ward his house from malevolent spirits, which places in the world are most known for paranormal activities. He became obsessed with cultures that personified death. He grew enamored with concepts of spirituality and mysticism, anything that suggested there was something beyond. Whether that was astronomy or astrology or physics or crystals, Salim didn't care. He just wanted to know whether any other humans had ever found an answer to the question of where things went when they mysteriously disappeared. This led him to history, then to sociology, then to anthropology. He made a career on fairly normal things, Muslim contributions to philosophies of naturalism during the golden age of antiquity, and then branched out quietly from there. His official work, the things he got paid for, were almost always about comparative cross-cultural studies, like this latest project concerning lunar rituals across hemispheres. His private work, when his papers were written and his books were published and his expertise as an anthropologist was done being prodded and poked, was different. The same work, intellectually speaking, but deeply different, because as Salim had learned from an early age, there were some things too outlandish for others to believe. His paychecks didn't come from searching for ley lines and portals. Salim didn't bother to know many people in Boston, though he did make a point to find a drug dealer very quickly. He didn't do any drugs himself, obviously, having watched the changeling thing that had been his brother fall prey to their destructive qualities, but people who distributed them were often ideal sources of information. Illicit activity shared the commonality of secrecy, which meant that if Selim wanted to find out what sorts of oddities were happening in his latest place of residence, it was always best to have a dealer around. This one was particularly fruitful. Doors are easy to find, Selim had explained while Alcott, the dealer, smoked quietly on his couch. They're always centers of paranormal activity, or electromagnetic forces, or weather, or time of year. The point is, a door's no good without a key, he said. My brother must have found a key, or someone else found it for him. Given their vocations, dealers usually did not respond negatively to this sort of bullshittery. Predictably, Alcott did not. I think I knew a guy like that, he said. Claims he saw through space. What was he on? Nothing habitual, said Alcott. Now, though. Now it's like he's just trying to kill whatever he saw. Who was it? Selim asked. Boyfriend, said Alcott. Ex, obviously. Are you on good terms? Communicable ones, at least? Why? Because, Selim said, thinking it was obvious. I want to see the key. There was only one way to traverse the laws of time and space: cognitive dissonance. Ancient physicists and astronomers understood that, even if they hadn't known exactly how to use it. Only the difficult-to-reach portions of the mind could do it. Doorways, as Selim had long suspected, had to be conjured within the mind. They had to be imagined, powerfully so, which almost no adult could do properly. Most things a human could imagine were only variations on things they'd seen in the realm they physically occupied. It's a pill, Alcott said over the phone. Of course it is, muttered Selim. They came to an agreement on the price, which was exorbitant. If it failed, Selim would have to write another book this year and offer several more guest lectures just to make up for it. If it succeeded, on the other hand, the money didn't mean a damn thing. Presumably there were other ways to do it. After all, Hassan was certainly not taking pills at the age of 11, if it had indeed been he who opened the door. What humans lacked in waking imagination, they possessed only in dreams, in the twisted nature of their subconscious. But a pill would work in a jam. Selim took the pill in his kitchen and began tasting sound immediately. His brain was rejecting the constraints of reality, and there was something yawning nearby. He turned to it, finding a zipper, then a series of musical notes to be played in a very specific order, which he obligingly performed. Then he licked the color pink and felt little seeds of azure burst between his teeth. Outside, the sun swallowed up the sky. His phone buzzed incessantly, merciless, so he put it on the counter and walked into his office, where his computer winked at him suggestively and reached out to stroke his thigh. Selim mumbled something about boundaries, and the computer smiled its pornographic smile, and then he turned his head, spotting a cavernous piece of sky. He tore it down like wallpaper, and behind it was a flock of birds that burst into bits of marshmallow down, and then he tumbled backwards for 30 years, landing beside a tree. He spoke to it in owl language, and then in Arabic, and then he wept profusely, prodigiously, and whispered, Hassan. Then he pushed into empty space and plucked a harp string, and suddenly there was a doorway, a portal, an entrance. He could not truthfully say he walked inside, more like he was pulled, and then he thought, oh no, I need to close the door behind me, but he didn't because something was pulling him, twisting in his chest and dragging him in two directions like a breath he hadn't fully caught. He knew he was somewhere he didn't belong. He was a not thing, a nothing, like the thing that had taken his brother's place. And he wanted a burrito, and he also wanted to lie down. But then he took several careening steps forward until reality ripped, and he fell through the tear in the page, landing on something soft. When he woke, his hands were bound, and something with keen eyes and sharp teeth smiled at him. English? It asked. Yes, Selim managed to croak. Everything was bright and blinding. Excellent. And what is your offering? His mouth was dry. Offering? You cannot arrive without a gift. Surely you know that. The dazzle of brightness soothed a little, gradually. It was gold and crystal, mostly. Everything that could be gold was very, very gold. Everything that could be crystal was very, very sharp. I'm looking for my brother, said Selim. I've been looking for him a long time. You do have a look of perpetuity, commented the thing Selim was now fairly sure was person-shaped, although not an actual person. But I'm afraid the prince will find you quite dull without a gift. Have you any talents? He could fall through worlds. Such as? The prince cares only for beauty, or for ugliness, which is beauty, or for beauty, which is profoundly ugly. I'm an anthropologist, Selim said. Meaning? I study culture, humans. He could see immediately he'd made a mistake. Humans are not interesting, said the thing, without gifts. Could I come back with a gift? You are already here. You have already failed. A pair of fingers snapped. Take him away. So anyway, that is Stone's Throw. I've described it previously as a watercolor of a story, which you may understand. But anyway, check my social media for that. It is available for pre-order. That link is below. But yeah, anyway, this has been me, Olivie Blake, not writing, and I'll see you next week.